Well, the first experience was my grandfather dying, and we were 7 years old. We didn't understand what death was, but that was my first experience. He was my grandmother's brother, and when he died, it really affected me because we never got to spend much time with him because he's the first person that ever looked at me as a man. And I was looking forward to the times we would spend together. And he just died. So that made me real sad. He would ask us about our girlfriends and stuff, and I would never understood what he meant. And then I told you, he asked me if I looked at a certain magazine, and I said yes. And he said that's okay. And ever since then, I felt so close to him and everything. Every time he would come over, I would want to sit by him and everything. So, but he died soon after that. But every time he would come over, I come down to visit. He lived in Greensboro, and he said, and I was looking forward to the times we would spend together, but we never got the chance to do that. And I've had to carry that for so long. Nobody ever known about that. So he just laid on the couch, and I guess he went to sleep. It was very emotional. I cried and cried and cried. Nobody knew why I cried so much.
The doctors told me she's gonna die, either tonight or tomorrow. So I decided to be there just to make sure I was there to the very last minute of her life. I was the only one in the room. Actually, when the machine started beeping, it was just me. It was 10 minutes before midnight, and the machine started beeping, and I wanted to run outside and call the nurses, but then I said, I don't want to miss this, I want to be there. So I stood in front, by her bedside, and just talking to her, telling her, I'm here, I'm still with you, I'm here. And then the two nurses came in and started checking her vital organs for about maybe less than a minute. And then the lines got flat on the screen, and she was gone. Last thing, one thing I didn't want to miss, I was looking at her body, her face, her hand, because she could only move one hand, left hand. So I was looking at that, and the last thing I saw was that she moved her left hand a little bit, and then that was it. The two nurses told me, she stopped breathing. Her heart is not beating anymore, so she's gone. And at that moment, I would look at her, and I tried to look up, to the ceiling and to see if there was something leaving her, trying to see. I knew, what was happening, so I wanted to make sure maybe I might miss something that nobody sees or nobody, So I check and look around, but no. And then I started to see her, change color, right there, right before my eyes. Mm-hmm. The one thing I wanted to make sure, because I know when somebody dies, the body gets cold and all that, so I put my hand behind her neck, which is still warm, and I wanted to feel that warmth, because I knew it was going to be gone in a minute or whatever, so I put my hand there trying to hold on to that warmth, and then I started to notice her face, pretty much from her forehead down, like a color changing from her natural skin color to kind of like grayish, yellowish color. It's hard to describe, but it was changing for sure. Yeah, so that was a strange thing to see too.
So my most impactful experience with death actually occurred this year in February. I lost a college friend who died unexpectedly. my friend had one of what they call an invisible disease. So she had sickle cell disease, and it's one of those things she had in college, and we didn't really, we knew that she had it, but we didn't really know the impact of it. And I saw on Facebook that my friend had passed away. So it was one of those things where it's like, am I really seeing this? Is this really happening? Again, it just sort of, my friends and I would start calling each other. So at the time, I really couldn't process it. I was just sort of reaching out to everyone. It was actually one of those kind of situations where my friend was married to my other friend, and they were going through a divorce. So sort of was, reaching out to him and a couple other friends that were really close to her. But yeah, I didn't really process it until a couple days later because I was trying to make sure that everyone else was okay. One thing that I'm not afraid to admit is I went to therapy after my friend's death to talk about the grieving process. I am a very private person and typically try to internalize everything. So therapy was actually really helpful in me dealing with the grieving process. There's a stigma a lot of times, especially in the African American community as a Black male, about talking to therapy and realizing that you are grieving, the whole being strong and being a man and getting over it. And so that's something I've struggled with in the past, but this experience has really rocked me to my core. A lot of my friendships changed, and a lot of now they're fortunately getting back to where they were before. But just really, I was already, and I think the thing with my friend's death is I was already under a lot of stress with my job. My dad was sick earlier that year. So I was just going through a lot of other changes. And then when that happened, it was on top of everything else that was going on. So just being able to reach out and being more vulnerable and, really being, instead of trying to hold, because I was really actually seeking into a depression when that happened. And I think I had to recognize that, I needed professional help at the time to help me move through that process. So.
Well, I was with my mother when she died. They called me up from she was in a nursing home, and they called me up and told me that I should come, and I knew from the way she was talking that it was getting to be the time for my mother to pass. So I went there, and it was a very peaceful death, and I feel like it was a good death, because she was not in pain, and she was laying there just breathing, and then all of one breath she took in, and then she didn't let it go out at all. And it was like about 2 minutes or 3 minutes later that the air came out of her. So that was her death, and it was like a final present to me to let me know that death wasn't that bad. She was in a nursing home where they took care of her. I couldn't take care of her anymore. I injured my back taking care of her at home. She would tend to fall down, and then she weighed about 200 pounds, and I couldn't lift her back up. And it got to be the point where I just couldn't handle it anymore, and I found a place that she liked, and it was near a railroad track because she loved to hear the trains go by, and she would listen to that. And they took very good care of her there. I would visit her. It started off every day, and then it kind of slacked off and went until finally it was once a week, because it's very hard for someone to go visit your parent. People make disparaging remarks about others who say, oh, you didn't go visit your mom. But let me tell you, I had to prepare myself. Every time I went, I had to steel myself and get up my courage and put on my happy face and say hi and talk to her. I would rub her arms and kiss her and talk to her. And then afterwards, I would go in the car and just cry and cry, because it was just so difficult and it was heart-wrenching. So I don't disparage people who say they haven't visited their parents, because it takes a lot of guts to do that. It isn't something that's very easy to do.
The first experience I had with death, I was 11 or 12 years old, and I had a little dog that was killed by a car driver, and it was a huge loss for me. I cried for 2 weeks, and well, it was very difficult for me to get this understood and process in my mind. Adults didn't seem to understand why I was so upset, which was more upsetting for me too, not to be understood. And after this little dog died, I promised myself not to love another pet again like that. Well, never say never, because maybe 3 decades later, it took me a while, but somebody gave me a dog when I was living in the United States, and it was kind of funny, but I was alone with the dog, and I looked at him and I told him, I'm not gonna love you. I'm going to feed you, I'm gonna take you to the bed, but I'm not going to love you. And I don't know how much they understand, but he was like, okay. I didn't love him for a while, but then he became my partner. We started exercising together. I was going through my divorce, so keeping that company with me was very special. And I love that dog. So one day I came back from a trip to Colombia, and he was there at the door. And I looked at him and I was like, I love you. I love you. And it was one of these movie moments, because I realized he was important for me. In your mind, only old people die, or maybe sick people die, but not people like my mother. She was very vibrant, super healthy, into yoga and healthy lifestyle. We weren't living together. She was living in Spain, and we talked like a week before she passed. I just received an email from her husband in Spain, and it was like, your mother died. And I'm like, what does he mean? What does he mean? I just talked to her. When I finally called him, he said that she had an asthma attack and the paramedics couldn't do anything. But I was still, that's not true. Nobody dies from asthma, which is not accurate. But I never thought asthma would be the cause of my mother's death. I thought she was going to die from a very, very old age, and that I was going to take care of her in her last days. It was shocking to know that she was in the other side of the world, and I couldn't be with her, and that she was gone. She was gone. And well, you know, I'm a poet, so to process that, I wrote a few poems, and I made a video, and I think since that moment, every time I'm writing, I just put the word mother somewhere, because she's there. Even if I write a romantic poem, I still write, my mother taught me, or flowers are like when my mother was smiling, or something like that. She's with me, even though it's sad that she's not here in the physical realm, but she's with me, and I think that's a beautiful thing. How my relationship with my mother changed was something amazing, almost like a miracle. Well, I had mentioned that she was very abusive, and I was a little afraid of her, and at some point I hated her. And I was kind of happy when she left to live with this man in Spain. Me and my brother, we were in Colombia. So when she left was a relief, but you never know how the mind works. And I started having a lot of psychological problems because she wasn't present in my life when I was growing up. With time, I moved to the United States, and I decided to invite her to spend some time with me, like a month or so. I didn't realize how much I had accumulated, how much anger I had against her, because everything she did just bothered me. and I would yell at her. I would say, "That's not how you do things." And I'm like, I was thinking maybe I became like her, or what's going on with me? Why am I acting like this? But I finally told her, you know what? I hate you. You were not a very good mother, and I have a lot of trouble in my relationships because of you. And she just looked at me like I was giving her the news. And she was like, well, I was just trying to educate you. Which, well, it didn't bother me. I think the most important part was to express that, to let it out, just to tell her that I hated her, release me from something that I was carrying with me for a long time. I didn't care. Her response was so cold, but after that, it was like, oh, okay, we can be friends now. It didn't happen immediately, but with time, we became best friends, and we talked to each other very often, even though she was living in Spain. And I think that's why it was so hard to lose her, because I lost her before. She went to live in another place. And now that I knew that I really had a mother, she wasn't available for obvious reasons. But we became friends, so I'm at peace with that. That she's gone, and well, we kind of fixed what was broken, and I'm good with that.
Their soul just goes to heaven. You know, it just goes up to heaven.
What I think happens is just we wake up, that's it. We wake up and say, oh, that was weird. We go with that. That was weird. I was thinking that was this guy, this person, or whatever. And I think, yeah, a lot of cultures think this is a dream. This is not reality. Even science now starting to think that. So, yeah, you see, well, any dream can become a reality. Whatever you dream, it can come true. You really wish it or whatever in life. So that's a dream. That pretty much say it. Yeah, we live in a dream. Everything is possible. This is life. So life is a dream. It's no question about it then.
Well, I'm sure you either go to heaven or you go to hell. And that's my personal belief. I'm too small to understand God's purposes. And I know He's a loving God, and He doesn't want us to go to hell. And I don't know why He created hell, which is very scary. But from what I know, there are only two options.
Everything's been planned out. We're going to be cremated. Already planned out, so we wouldn't have to worry about it when the time comes. We've got our tomb markers picked out and everything. I've got a song I want to be played at my memorial service. Friends by Michael W. Smith. It just has special meaning to me. It talks about friendship and how it goes on after you die.
What I want to happen to my body when I die is two things. I'm claustrophobic, so I just want to make sure I'm dead. I don't want to be buried alive. Obviously, it's a slim chance of that happening, but I don't want to take any chances. So I want to be cremated first. But at the same time, I think there's something mystical, traditional, or I don't know what you want to call it, about being buried. You can see it on almost like cavemen, burying their dead in a specific area. So I want to be buried. My ashes, I don't want my ashes to be thrown on the ocean or whatever, some people do that. No, I want to be in a grave so people can come and, whoever, family members come and see me there, visit me there. This happens about I want to say 5-7 months after my mother passed away. And I was the one doing all the paperwork with the cemetery. So they called me. They used to call me about this. We need you to come and sign this paper and so on and so forth. So one time I'm driving and I see I got a phone call and I see the caller ID. And it was the cemetery. I said, well, I think I was done with that. So they called me and they said, well, Mr. Vasquez, how are you doing? I'm doing fine and all this. I said, well, the reason we're calling you is because you bought the plot here for your mother, and so. But we're having a Black Friday sale. All the spaces are half price, and I'm thinking, really, like capitalism, commercialism, it goes that far, to have a Black Friday sale. But then I started thinking, I said, wait a minute, of all the things, at least in my case, this is something that I'm going to need. So I said, you know what, I'm in the area, I'll stop by. I'm about 15 minutes away. So I went there. And for some reason, I was expecting like a long line of people, waiting there with chairs and, like staying overnight to get a plot or whatever. Obviously, there was nothing all that. So I walked in there and I said, well, okay, so give me the facts. What's the deal here? So explain everything. Yeah, everything is half price. I said, okay, well, I want one next to my mother. Just get me one right there.
Actually, okay, so I want the formal funeral ceremony, but I actually want to be cremated. And I am obsessed with South Africa, so I really would like someone to take my ashes to South Africa and spread them. I doubt that they would do it. They probably will just throw them outside in the woods. But yeah, I don't know. I just want something exotic when I die. And the crazy thing too, I didn't really think about death, but when you have someone that's around you that your same age die, you start thinking about life insurance and all this kind of stuff that I really didn't think about before. So yeah, that's something that I sort of want, like a celebration, but also like the cremation. And definitely I'm an organ donor now as well, so definitely would like my organs to be donated to science. Now, because I guess my friend died, one of her reasons for her death was her organ failures through the disease, so definitely has made me more conscious of eating healthier, and so that way if something were to happen to me, I could possibly donate my organs to someone to save their life. So.
Well, I'm planning to have a green funeral, which means that I'll go to a cemetery that has green funerals. Where they do is dig a hole about 3 feet deep, not very deep, and then they place your body there in a biodegradable container. Now, I personally prefer the shroud, but see, living alone, I don't know how fast my body would be discovered to be dead, that I'm dead. And so if it decomposes too much, I have to be put into a cardboard box that's biodegradable. And then they cover up the hole, and they have the native vegetation grow over it, and I would just go back to the earth. And that's the way I was hoping. And the one I'm looking at in Belmont has instead of little markers, they would have a big sort of a directory. So you can look up, this is the person and they're in this particular spot. And you can go and see where the spot is.
Oh, it's completely when you go through the experience seeing somebody die, it changes your perspective from life. That I got rid of a lot of stuff, a lot of material stuff that I had. When I was getting rid of my clothes, like all the different colors clothes and all that stuff, I started getting rid of things that I knew. I said, everything is just, nothing lasts forever. I don't need this, I don't need that. So the one thing I'm trying to do now is just live life. Live life, forget about material things. We're gonna die. and it's gonna be, you know, before we know it. Hopefully, it'll be quick.
Now I had to start living my life the way I want to, because you never know when your time is up. But I'm going to make the best what time ever I have left. And just live for today. That's all you can do. Don't be afraid to tell people that you love them or you care about them. Just say whatever you're going to say, and just live your life. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah, you can give all the advice you want to kids or children or young people. They won't get it. They won't get it. I didn't get it. But I'm going, this experience with my mother, I'm going into that. I get more. I want to learn. But I don't want to learn math or science. No, I want to learn more about human behavior, people, experiences, and give advice in a way. And if you notice, some old cultures, they always have old people to give advice to the young. We're losing that. And that's the reason why there's all this chaos in our society now. We're putting all people in nursing homes, and we don't want to see them, you know, because we know everything, and we don't know anything.
Well, I tell you, it's no picnic, and it's a lot of pain involved in it, physical pain. So be prepared for that. And I would tell my younger self to go and do a lot of traveling when you're younger, because I put off my traveling, and I thought, well, I'll just travel when I'm older and retired. But now that I'm, you know, my bones are creaking and they hurt, and I can't walk as long as I want to, or stand up as long as I want to, I find that I can't really travel as much as I like to. I think that's one important thing, is to get some traveling in while you can. So one of the things I wanted to go was go to Tikal and go up the steps, you know, but, you know, I couldn't even crawl up the steps now. So there are a lot of things like that, you know.
Just find joy in what you do in every day.